So, Chris, you were head of tournament delivery for the London 2012 Olympics and Paralympics and also the 2015 Rugby World Cup. What lessons did you learn from those tournaments that you can implement here, or is football, and particularly women's football, something completely different?
Yeah, I really do think the way sort of all those events work with all the delivery partners to sort of deliver a cohesive, aligned sort of tournament plan to really maximise the benefits of hosting these big events was key. I said it before, you can't deliver these events alone. You really need to work with all the stakeholders to deliver a sort of impactful tournament. And that's definitely a lesson that I think we want to take through into this. We need to work with the venues. They know their audience very well. We want to work with them. We need to work with the host cities. They know their sort of local population, who we need to really engage with to try and entice them to the games. And then, I think kind of there's some fantastic resourcing that we've taken from those previous tournaments as well. The UK has a phenomenal sort of strength in delivering major events. We want to tap into that to deliver the Women's Euros.
And you're also working on the Men's Euros this summer, where fan parks and viewing zones are going to be set up in London. Are those things that you would like to have for the Women's Euros as well? Or are there any more innovative ideas that you're looking to implement in 2021?
Yeah, we definitely are talking to all our host cities about what sort of additional activity they can provide in and around the venue. I think our first priority is to try and sell as many tickets and get people in the stadium as possible. So it's really working with host cities to understand how can you enhance that spectator experience before and after a match, rather than with London for 2020, for example, we're setting up additional screenings because there's only 90,000 seats and the ticket demand for England games in the Euros is phenomenal, as is all the games. That's not quite the same for the Women's Euros. So what we're trying to do is drive demand to the stadium and then working with host cities to ensure that they've got a great experience. If there is demand in host cities, we'd love to talk to them about fan zones, and we are. But I think we need to be quite realistic about what the budgets that the cities have, where our priorities are, and what can be done. But absolutely, we are talking to host cities about, be it a fan march, be it a meeting point, be it a fan zone, be it a screening. They're all on the table, but we need to be quite realistic about what will be delivered and where our focus should be, and that's driving attendance in stadia to give the teams that full stadium experience.
And over 700,000 tickets will be available for the tournament. So what kind of occupancy rate are you aiming at? Is an average attendance of 20,000 suggested by UEFA an achievable target?
I don't really want to get into specific attendance targets other than to say that we want full stadia where possible. And I think in certain matches it'll be easier to achieve than in others. I think England matches we'd expect a much higher capacity than we would for potentially some of those bigger stadia where we don't have any kind of England games to pull into. So the Sheffields, the Milton Keynes, they are big stadia where we know we're going to have big capacities to fill. So across the board, we want to try and sell as many tickets as possible and have as many full stadia as possible. And we'll look at doing that through accessible tickets, but also through working with local communities to try and ensure that schools and universities have the opportunity to come to the games as well.
And have you consulted with people who worked on the last Euros in the Netherlands and the World Cup in France, and what have you learned from them, and what do you think England can improve on from those tournaments?
Yeah, so we definitely, UEFA are a fantastic resource in that respect, sort of having oversight of all the previous Women's Euros. They retain a lot of knowledge in terms of what went well, how some things work. So we definitely have spoken to the delivery team from Holland directly. We've also spoken to the organising committee from France. I think the last meeting we had with the organising committee from France was very much around ticketing, and how they did a really good job with selling tickets to the tournament, but also some of the lessons they learned around, full stadia, sort of tickets and how they allocated tickets to fans. There were notably some issues, as there often are with big events. So absolutely, this a big part of our process is learning from previous lessons, previous major events, and then taking it forward.
In previous tournaments around the world, ticket holders have sometimes been offered free transport across host cities. Is this something you're looking at to encourage fans to attend matches?
It's not something we're looking at. I think hosting the tournament, hosting the events, also already puts a significant strain on host cities to provide sort of security and provide sort of transport infrastructure to ensure fans can move to the venues. We're not looking to put out free public transport to the venues. What we will do is focus on those cities where potentially you might need a transport solution that doesn't already exist. So, a good example is we know Lee in Wigan, it doesn't have sort of good public access transport access to the venue directly. So we will work with the local council to potentially put on shuttle buses to try and move fans from the city centre to the venue. In the likes of Southampton, it's quite a city centre location. So we will leave fans to sort of, work. Now we will work with wayfinding to try and move fans through the city. But we're not going to do what the men's Euros did, and that's put free public transport with every ticket. It's incredibly costly, it's incredibly difficult to deliver, and we believe our priorities and focus are best elsewhere.
After the World Cup, there's certainly been added interest in the England women's team, but what ways are you looking at to create interest in the other 15 qualifying teams so that every match is well attended?
Yeah, and I really that comes down to our ticketing marketing campaign. How we're going to sell the tournament. I think I presented earlier some principles about this is elite sport. This is a big major event. This is a once in a lifetime generation to go and attend a footballing tournament major event in your host country. That opportunity doesn't come every now and again. It's a rare occasion, and therefore people should embrace that. People should embrace those games in their host venues and host cities. And everyone should try and be part of it. But we know a big part of our marketing campaign is going to need to sort of not just look at football fans, but big eventers, people that want to be part of something special, which we believe this tournament can be.
And you said earlier that choosing the host venues was one of your most difficult decisions. The 8 venues used aren't going to include any in the north, east or south west, so are you looking at ways to get those parts of the countries involved in the tournament as well?
Yeah, I think it's that age-old question about we can't go everywhere across the country. I mentioned earlier that the tournament has a cluster of model approach, and so we have to have venues paired with each other, which means we have to have that has to work with where the teams will base themselves to how they'll travel to the venues. We think we've got good coverage across the country, and we believe that the majority of sort of the country can drive to venues or access venues through accessible public transport, be it the rail system or the road network. So whilst we're not everywhere, we are relatively comfortable that we are in a good enough sort of spread of venues across the country. We will, of course, engage with the wider country through our marketing campaign. We're not going to just target those that live in Manchester for the Manchester games. We will want to talk to the entire country. And we know people will travel for big events. We know people will travel to go and watch England. And so that's very much part of our plan as well.
The Brentford Community Stadium is the only one of the 8 venues not yet operational. Have they been set any target dates to meet UEFA criteria? And will they need to stage an international match as a test run?
So we work very closely with Brentford in terms of their understanding where they are in the design process of the stadium. We've had venue visits with the stadium to see how it's progressing. As far as we're concerned, we're very comfortable with where they are. We believe that sort of football matches will be played throughout next season in Brentford before the Women's Euros arrives. So we're not at all worried by Brentford. We think it's a fantastic new stadium and a fantastic opportunity to host women's football. And we're very comfortable with the planning that's underway. And
finally, when you look back on the tournament in 10 years' time, what do you hope that people will think about the UEFA Women's Euros in England? What do you want the tournament's legacy to be?
Yeah, I think there's legacy in two sides. There's obviously the kind of participation legacy, and we talked about that really, the tournament being an amplification of the great work the FA is doing in the women's game more generally, to increase participation, to increase the number of girls playing, to referees, and all the way through the system. So there definitely needs to be a kind of step change in that respect for participation and legacy. And then from an event perspective, I think we want it to be remembered as a tournament and major event that gripped the country, that everyone felt part of, that everyone was, reminiscing about the fantastic summer and the atmosphere that they had and the family-friendly nature of the events, and that it was just generally a very accessible tournament for everybody, and that everyone had a great time going to the tournament.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Great.
Cheers.